During the 20th century, automakers were frequently building radical prototypes to test new ideas. So today, we're going to be counting down 15 of the weirdest experimental vehicles that never reached production. Starting with number 15, the Chrysler turbine car. This was one of the most ambitious experimental programs undertaken by an American automaker in the 20th century. Developed in the early 1960s, it sought to replace the conventional piston engines with a turbine power plant, a concept borrowed from aircraft design. The aim was to create a smoother, more durable engine capable of running on multiple types of fuel, including gas, kerosene, and even vegetable oil. Chrysler's turbine program had begun in the 1950s, but the 1963 turbine car marked its most public demonstration. 50 hand-built cars were constructed by Ghia in Italy and loaned to select members of the public in the US for real-world testing. Over the course of 3 years, around 200 families were given the opportunity to drive the cars and report on their experiences. Now, technically, the turbine engine offered several advantages. It had way fewer moving parts than a piston engine, required no cooling system, and produced minimal vibrations. The cars could run on virtually any combustible liquid, making them theoretically flexible during fuel shortages. However, the engine also had significant drawbacks. Fuel efficiency was pretty poor, throttle response was sluggish compared to piston engines, and the exhaust temperatures were extremely high, which created safety concerns. Public reactions during the test program were mixed. Drivers appreciated the smoothness and futuristic appeal of the turbine powertrain, but critics noted the lack of low-end torque and the whistling jet-like sound, which some found unrefined. Ultimately, the turbine car never entered mass production. Chrysler faced multiple hurdles, including high manufacturing costs, emission concerns, and the looming 1970s oil crisis, which shifted the industry's priorities towards fuel efficiency. And additionally, U.S. regulatory requirements for emissions and noise did present significant barriers that the turbine technology couldn't easily overcome. Of the 55 that were originally built, including the prototypes, most were destroyed at the conclusion of the program, as Chrysler wanted to avoid potential tax liabilities associated with gifting the vehicles to test drivers. Only 9 samples survived, many of which are now displayed in museums, including the Henry Ford Museum and the Smithsonian. The program did provide valuable data on consumer acceptance of unconventional technology, and it did cement Chrysler's reputation for innovation during the post-war era. Number 14, General Motors Firebird series. The GM Firebird concept cars, they were produced between 1953 and 64. They were among the most radical and experimental vehicles ever created by a major American automaker. Conceived during the height of the jet age, the Firebird series explored the potential of gas turbine in automobiles, taking direct inspiration from the contemporary jet fighters. 4 distinct prototypes were built, Firebird 1, 2, 3, and 4, each pushing the boundaries of design. Firebird 1, introduced in 1953, was the most extreme. It featured a single-seat fighter jet-style cockpit and a sharply pointed fuselage with small wings and a vertical tail fin. Powered by a 370-horsepower gas turbine engine, the car was never intended for road use, and it functioned more as a high-speed test bed. Its appearance at GM's Motorama show symbolized futuristic optimism, but it also raised questions about the practicality for everyday drivers. Firebird 2, unveiled in '56, shifted towards a more realistic 4-seat engine while still retaining the jet-inspired styling. It introduced some advanced features such as a titanium body, regenerative braking, and proposed automatic highway guidance system. This was a visionary concept anticipating modern autonomous driving. Firebird 3, revealed in '59, continued the trend, incorporating even more refined turbine powertrain, joystick controls instead of a traditional steering wheel, and advanced aerodynamics. By the time the Firebird 4 debuted in 1964, GM had largely abandoned the gas turbines for passenger vehicles. But the concept reflected more of a design study than a serious production prospect. Despite the allure, though, the Firebirds faced significant challenges. Gas turbines were smooth and powerful, but suffered from poor fuel economy and slow throttle response. Moreover, the cost of producing turbine engines remained prohibitively high, making them impractical. None of the Firebird prototypes progressed to production, but they profoundly influenced automotive design language, and they demonstrated the industry's willingness to experiment during the '50s and '60s. The Firebird stands as an example to an era of boundless technological optimism. While gas turbine cars never became mainstream, the the experiments did contribute to advancements in materials, aerodynamics, and conceptual thinking that shaped later developments in the automotive industry. Number 13, the Ford Nucleon. The Ford Nucleon. Love this one. Reminds me of Fallout. This was one of the most radical concept cars of the 1950s, envisioned during an era when nuclear power was seen as a limitless energy source for nearly every application, including cars. Unveiled in 1958, the Nucleon proposed a compact, car-mounted nuclear reactor as its power source, eliminating the need for conventional fuel. Rather than use a gasoline engine, the Nucleon was designed to operate with a small fission reactor located at the rear of the vehicle. Now, in theory, the reactor would generate steam to power a turbine, which would then drive the car's wheels. Ford engineers speculated that a single fuel cartridge could last thousands of miles before requiring a replacement. The concept promised virtually unlimited range and freedom from the gas stations that dominated mid-20th century travel. Its design reflected its futuristic ambitions and the safety concerns of housing a reactor in a passenger vehicle. The car's cab was placed far forward, maximizing the distance between passengers and the reactor compartment. The body was elongated and streamlined with a low profile typical of the 50s American concept cars, and although no functional prototype was ever built, scale models were displayed to demonstrate this vision. And despite its boldness, though, it never advanced beyond the conceptual stage. The technology required for a vehicle like this, especially miniaturized nuclear reactors with sufficient shielding for passenger safety, didn't exist, and it still doesn't exist today in a form for practical cars. Public attitudes toward nuclear energy also shifted in the decades that followed, particularly after high-profile accidents and growing awareness of radioactive waste issues. Nevertheless, the Nucleon remains an example of mid-century futurism, embodying the optimism and naivete of the atomic age. It showed how automakers of the era were willing to imagine radical alternatives to internal combustion, even if the practical barriers were insurmountable. The Nucleon survives today only as a scale model, preserved in Ford's archives and occasionally exhibited at museums focusing on automotive history. Number 12, the Mercedes-Benz C111. The Mercedes-Benz C111 was a series of experimental sports cars built between 1969 and 79 to test an advanced technology, particularly unconventional engines and aerodynamics. Over a decade, Mercedes produced several iterations of the C111, each featuring striking wedge-shaped styling, gull-wing doors reminiscent of the earlier 300 SL, and a range of innovative powertrains that pushed the limits of engineering. The first two generations were powered by Wankel rotary engines. Now that's a technology seen as lightweight and high-revving compared to traditional piston engines. The C111i featured a 3-rotor Wankel engine producing around 280 horses, while the C111-2 upgraded to a 4-rotor version delivering nearly 350 horsepower. These cars were capable of remarkable performance for the era, with top speeds exceeding 180 miles an hour during testing. The later versions of the C111 abandoned the rotary concept due to durability and emission concerns, instead experimenting with high-performance diesel engines. The C111 3 and 4 diesel variants set world records, including a sustained 195-mile-an-hour run over 12 hours and a top speed of 252 miles an hour on a closed track. Those achievements showed that diesel engines, typically associated with economy rather than performance, could deliver exceptional endurance under extreme conditions. The C111 was never intended for mass production, and Mercedes used it primarily as a test platform. Lessons learned from its rotary and diesel experiments informed later developments in its engine tech, particularly in endurance racing and high-speed road cars. The C111's design language also influenced future sports cars, foreshadowing elements of models like the SLS-AMG decades later. Today, surviving C111 prototypes are highly valued museum pieces, with examples housed in the Mercedes-Benz Museum in Stuttgart. The car's combination of design, engineering, and record-setting performance ensures its place as one of the most significant concept vehicles of the 20th century. While it never reached production, its legacy endures. Number 11, the AMC Amitron. The AMC Amitron, sounds like a robot, was a groundbreaking electric car prototype developed by American Motors Corporation, AMC, during the late 1960s. At a time when mainstream electric vehicles were virtually non-existent and automotive focus was firmly on gas-powered cars, the Amitron stood out as one of the earliest serious attempts to design a practical electric passenger vehicle. Unveiled in 1967, it was a compact three-passenger hatchback featuring futuristic styling and innovative battery technology for its era. AMD partnered with Gulton Industries, that was a company specializing in battery development, to create a dual battery system. Now, it used two separate battery packs, nickel-cadmium for rapid acceleration and lithium-nickel fluoride for steady cruising. That was a concept decades ahead of its time and an early precursor to hybrid-like energy management strategies. In theory, the battery system allowed for a range of about 150 miles on a single charge. That was impressive for the technology available at the time. The vehicle's lightweight construction, under 2,000 pounds, and aerodynamics further enhanced that efficiency. The small footprint and forward-looking design did anticipate later urban electric cars in both form and function. However, the Amitron remained strictly a prototype. Despite promising early test results, battery costs and limitations in recharging infrastructure made commercialization unfeasible in the 1960s. Additionally, public interest in electric vehicles was pretty minimal at the time, as gas remained cheap and emissions concerns had not yet become a mainstream issue. The Amitron didn't progress to production, but it did provide a foundation for AMC's later electric experiments, including the Electron and other concept vehicles developed during the 70s energy crisis. Today, the sole surviving Amitron prototype is preserved and occasionally displayed at museums, offering a rare glimpse into a forgotten chapter of electric vehicle innovation. Number 10. The Toyota EX7. The Toyota EX7. It was an experimental sports car introduced in 1970, created to showcase Toyota's advanced engineering. Revealed at the Tokyo Motor Show, the EX7 was designed not for production, but as a technological demonstrator, illustrating how far Toyota could push performance and materials. It featured a low-slung wedge profile typical of late 1960s and early 70s concept cars, with dramatic scissor-style doors and a sharply pointed nose. Underneath, Toyota engineers equipped it with a mid-mounted 5-liter V8 engine, producing about 450 horses. That was a figure that rivaled or exceeded contemporary supercars from Europe. The combination of lightweight construction and high power output suggested exceptional performance, though the car remained a showpiece and wasn't extensively tested. One of its most notable aspects was the focus on advanced safety features. That was an unusual emphasis for concept cars of this era. Toyota incorporated crumple zones, energy-absorbing materials, and improved driver visibility. The car also experimented with aerodynamics, using wind tunnel testing to refine its wedge shape for stability at high speeds. But despite its striking design and specifications, the EX7 was never intended for a mass production. Toyota used the project primarily to experiment with technologies that would later influence its performance and sports car programs, including vehicles like the Toyota 2000 GT and subsequent Supra models. Elements of its styling and engineering also informed Toyota's approach to mid-engine layouts, though the company wouldn't produce a true mid-engine sports car until the 1980s, the MR2. Today, the EX7 survives in a unique prototype housed in Toyota's collection. It remains an emblem of Toyota's transitional period, from building modest economy cars to competing with global automakers. The futuristic design and engineering continue to make it one of Japan's most intriguing concept vehicles, from the golden age of automotive experimentation. Number 9. Volkswagen Aerodynamic Research VW. The Volkswagen 1L was an experimental vehicle unveiled in 2002 that sought to achieve an extraordinary goal, consuming only 1 liter of fuel per 100 kilometers. That's about 235 miles per gallon. Developed under the then Volkswagen CEO Ferdinand Piëch, the 1L was conceived not as a production car but as a proof of concept demonstrating extreme fuel efficiency. Its body was made almost entirely from carbon fiber reinforced polymer, keeping its weight to an absolute minimum, 640 pounds. Its design prioritized minimal drag with a teardrop shape, enclosed rear wheels, and a drag coefficient of just 0.16. That's among the lowest ever achieved by any road-capable vehicle. Power came from a single-cylinder 0.3-liter diesel engine producing about 8.5 horsepower, paired with a manual gearbox. Now, while modest in output, that was sufficient to propel the car towards speeds of up to 75 miles an hour, thanks to the extremely low weight and streamlined shape. The fuel tank held just 6.5 liters, that's 1.7 gallons of diesel, yet that was enough for over 600 kilometers, 373 miles of range. But despite its remarkable efficiency, it wasn't intended for mass production due to cost and practicality. The carbon fiber body was prohibitively expensive, and the tandem seating and sparse interior made it unsuitable for mainstream buyers. However, the project did lay the groundwork for subsequent ultra-efficient Volkswagen prototypes, including the XL1, which entered limited production in 2013. But the 1L remained significant for demonstrating what was technically possible when efficiency is prioritized. Though it never reached production, it helped inspire ongoing efforts towards extreme fuel efficiency and alternative propulsion in an era increasingly defined by environmental concerns. Number 8. The Chrysler Voyager 3. The Chrysler Voyager 3. This was an unconventional experimental vehicle revealed at the 1990 Detroit Auto Show. Unlike traditional concepts that focused on styling or performance, the Voyager 3 explored a radical modular design, two separate vehicles that could operate independently or combine into a single unit. The front module was a compact car capable of seating 3 passengers, while the rear module functioned as an auxiliary engine and passenger pod. In its compact configuration, the Voyager 3's front module operated as a small city car with a 3-cylinder engine. For longer trips or when more space was needed, the rear module could be coupled to provide additional seating and power. The two powertrains worked in tandem when joined, effectively creating a dual-engine vehicle with enhanced performance. This design addressed the challenges of building a car versatile enough for both urban commuting and family travel without requiring 2 separate cars. The concept was way ahead of its time, predating modern ideas of vehicle modularity and flexible platforms. However, it also introduced significant engineering and safety challenges. The coupling mechanism between the two halves had to ensure structural integrity, seamless power distribution, and reliable braking, all of which were difficult to achieve with the technology available at the time. And public reaction to the Voyager 3 was pretty mixed. While praised for its creativity, critics did question the practicality of maintaining 2 connected engines and the potential for complexity for owners. The project never advanced beyond the prototype stage, and Chrysler eventually abandoned the concept as it focused more on conventional minivan development. That was an area where the company achieved significant commercial success during the 1990s. Despite its failure to reach production, though, it does remain a fascinating example of car experimentation. It anticipated trends in modular design and multi-purpose vehicles that continue to emerge today. As a concept, it showed Chrysler's willingness to rethink the basic structure of the car, even if the market and technology of the era weren't ready to embrace it. Moving on to number 7, the Renault etoile filante. Unveiled in 1956, the Renault etoile filante was an experimental land speed record car powered by a gas turbine, a technology more commonly associated with aircraft. Its name means shooting star in French, and it reflected both its futuristic appearance and the ambition to push the boundaries of speed. Developed by Renault in collaboration with French aerospace engineers, it used a 270 horsepower engine, the same type employed in helicopters of the period. The purpose wasn't mass production, but rather to explore the potential of turbine propulsion. The aerodynamics, of course, were critical to the design. It featured a streamlined fiberglass body with a distinctive bullet shape, fully enclosed wheels, and a long tail fin for stability at high speeds. Its construction prioritized lightness, weighing just over 950 kilograms, that's about 2,100 pounds, while the turbine's power delivery promised exceptional acceleration compared to piston engines. In September of 1956, Renault took the car to the Bonneville Salt Flats in Utah. Now that's a site famous for high-speed records. During testing, the car achieved an average speed of 191 miles or 307 kilometers per hour over a flying mile, setting world records for turbine-powered cars in its class. That achievement drew some significant international attention, and it showed France's post-war ambitions to reclaim technological leadership in both automotive and aerospace sectors. Despite its success as a record setter, it was never intended for production. Gas turbine engines, while smooth and powerful, suffered from high fuel consumption and slow throttle. Today, the Renault etoile filante is preserved in the museum in France, and it's occasionally displayed at historic motoring events. It remains a symbol of 1950s optimism and the cross-pollination of automotive and aerospace engineering during the jet age. Although it didn't lead to any turbine-powered road cars, its legacy endures as one of the most beautiful, experimental vehicles of its time. Number 6. Mazda RX500. The Mazda RX500. It was revealed at the 1970 Tokyo Motor Show. It was an experimental sports car designed to showcase Mazda's rotary engine technology, and it explored advanced safety concepts. Unlike a conventional concept car focused solely on styling, the RX500 combined design with functional experimentation. The mid-engine layout housed a 982cc twin-rotor Wankel engine, producing about 250 horsepower. Its lightweight construction and aerodynamics allowed it to top speed reported at over 130 miles an hour, or 210 kilometers an hour. Unusually, it employed sliding canopy-style doors that lifted upwards and forward, a dramatic departure from traditional hinge designs and a hallmark of the 1970s concepts. One of its most notable features was the innovative rear lighting system. It used color-coded lights to indicate acceleration, cruising, or braking, green, yellow, and red respectively, intended to communicate the driver's intentions to following traffic. That experimental safety feature, though never adopted, anticipated modern adaptive lighting systems aimed at improving road safety. Now, visually, it epitomized the futuristic aesthetic of the era, with a sharp wedge profile, dramatic rear haunches, and a canopy-style cockpit. It drew comparisons to contemporary European concept cars and signaled Mazda's ambition to compete on a global stage and move beyond its reputation as a maker of small economy vehicles. The RX500 never really progressed beyond the prototype stage, primarily due to the impracticality of the radical design. However, it served as a valuable testbed for Mazda's engineering team and helped cement the company's commitment to rotary technology, which did later define production models like the RX-7 and RX-8. Today, the sole surviving RX500 prototype is in Mazda's museums in Hiroshima, where it remains a highlight for enthusiasts and historians. The car is celebrated not only for its styling and its technological ambition, but also for representing a formative moment in Mazda's evolution from a niche manufacturer to a globally recognized innovator. Number 5. The Alfa Romeo BAT series. The Alfa Romeo BAT Berlinetta Aerodynamica Tecnica series was a trio of experimental concept cars created in collaboration between Alfa Romeo and the Italian design house Bertone. Produced between 1953 and 55, the BAT 5, 7, and 9 explored extreme aerodynamic design principles. These vehicles were not intended for production, but rather to showcase styling and test theories that could influence automotive design. The BAT cars were based on the chassis of the Alfa Romeo 1900, using its inline-4 and basic mechanical layout. But what set them apart was their bodywork, shaped by Bertone's chief designer Franco Scaglione. Each successive model pushed the boundaries of aerodynamic experimentation further. The BAT 5, unveiled at the '53 Turin Motor Show, featured prominent rear tail fins, enclosed wheel arches, and a dramatically tapered tail. The BAT 7, introduced in '54, took the concept even further, with exaggerated fins that curved inward and a drag coefficient reportedly as low as 0.19. That was extraordinary for that era. The final car, the BAT 9 of 1955, represented a slightly toned-down design that hinted at how some of these experimental ideas might be adapted to more practical production cars. The purpose of the BAT program wasn't just purely stylistic either, it was rooted in research. The BAT series allowed Alfa Romeo and Bertone to study airflow in a way very few other manufacturers were attempting at the time. The data gathered here later influenced the production cars and contributed to a broader understanding of how streamlined forms could improve performance. Though never intended for the road, the BAT cars gained immense attention for their looks. Swooping curves and dramatic fins captured the public imagination and became icons of the 1950s. The three original cars survived and were occasionally displayed together at auto shows and museums, most notably reunited at events like Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance. In 2020, the trio was sold as a single lot at Sotheby's auctions for over $14 million. That reflects their status as some of the most significant concept cars ever produced. Their legacy lies in their enduring influence on car design and the role in pushing the limits of what was possible in aerodynamics during the mid-20th. Number 4. The GM XP 512E. While that model is a namefull, the GM XP512E was an experimental electric vehicle developed by General Motors at the height of the 1960s fascination with alternative propulsion. At a time when most major automakers were focused on performance and styling, GM quietly explored battery-powered concepts that could address growing concerns about urban pollution and energy usage, issues that would become much more prominent in the following decade. Revealed in 1969, the XP512E was a compact two-seat coupe designed primarily as a research platform. It featured a low-slung fiberglass body and an unusually aerodynamic profile for its time, with a drag coefficient estimated at 0.35 that was competitive with sports cars of that time. One of the most significant contributions was its role in advancing GM's understanding of battery management and regenerative braking. Engineers tested various battery chemistries and explored ways to extend the range, which at the time was limited to roughly 40 to 60 miles per charge. That was typical for lead-acid systems. It also incorporated lightweight materials and compact packaging, foreshadowing strategies that would later appear. Now, the 512E didn't move beyond the prototype phase for several reasons. Battery technology of the late 60s was inadequate for mainstream adoption. Additionally, consumer demand for electric vehicles was virtually non-existent at the time, and regulatory pressures for cleaner transportation hadn't yet fully materialized. But despite its obscurity, it occupies an important place in electric vehicle history. It marked one of GM's earliest serious explorations into EVs, predating better-known projects like the 1990s EV1 more than 2 decades later. Today, it's preserved in the GM's Heritage Center and occasionally displayed at historical automotive events. And while it never came close to production, it's a reminder that even during the muscle car era, engineers were quietly experimenting with technologies that would one day become central to the automotive industry's future. Number 3. The Saab 9000 EV1. The Saab 9000 EV1, or Experimental Vehicle 1, was an advanced concept car developed by Saab in '85 to showcase both design and emerging safety technology. Based on the underpinnings of the Saab 9000, which had debuted the same year, the EV1 represented the Swedish automaker's vision of how a performance-oriented, yet environmentally conscious vehicle might look in the future. The EV1 was notable for its extensive use of lightweight composite materials and construction methods. The body panels were made from fiberglass-reinforced plastics, and solar panels were integrated into the roof. That was a highly unusual feature for the mid-1980s to help power the auxiliary systems like ventilation. The design, of course, emphasized aerodynamics, with a drag coefficient significantly lower than most production cars. It achieved it through smooth bodywork, pop-up headlights, and a sharply sloped windshield. Performance was another focus of the EV1. It used a turbocharged 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, producing around 285 horsepower. The interior, of course, incorporated advanced electronics for the time, including digital displays and an early heads-up display projected onto the windshield. That was a technology that would later appear in some Saab production vehicles and eventually spread throughout the industry. While the EV1 was gas-powered rather than electric, it did foreshadow trends in hybrid and solar assist technologies that would become more relevant decades later. The concept did also test advanced safety features like energy-absorbing bumpers and reinforced occupant protection structures, building on Saab's reputation for prioritizing crashworthiness. The EV1 never really entered production. It was primarily used as a research and promotion tool, appearing at auto shows and in Saab's marketing materials. However, elements of its design, like the aerodynamic principles, the solar roof concept, and cockpit-style dashboards, later influenced Saab models. Today, the sole Saab 9000 EV1 prototype is preserved in the Saab Car Museum in Trollhättan, Sweden. It remains a fascinating example of mid-1980s automotive futurism. Number 2. BMW E1. The BMW E1, the Beamer E1, was an experimental electric vehicle developed in the early 1990s as part of BMW's response to growing interest in zero-emission transportation. Unveiled at the '91 International Motor Show in Frankfurt, the E1 represented BMW's first serious exploration into battery-powered cars, decades before the company's modern I-Series. Designed from the ground up as an electric car rather than the conversion of an existing platform, it featured an aluminum space frame and plastic body panels to minimize weight. The compact dimensions, it's roughly the size of a modern subcompact, made it ideal for city driving, while its hatchback configuration provided practical space. It was powered by a rear-mounted electric motor that produced about 45 horsepower, paired with a sodium-sulfur battery capable of delivering an estimated range of around 120 miles, or about 200 kilometers per charge. That was impressive for 1990s battery tech. The car's top speed was about 75 miles an hour, 120 kilometers, both suitable for highway and city use, and charging required several hours using standard outlets of the time. The aluminum frame incorporated energy-absorbing crumple zones, and the vehicle's materials were chosen with recyclability in mind. The interior had digital instrumentation and a minimalist layout, which reflected BMW's interest in merging advanced tech with user-friendly design. The E1 underwent real-world testing in several European cities and was generally well-received by researchers and journalists. However, it never entered mass production. High battery cost, limited charging infrastructure, and tepid consumer demand for electric cars in the early 90s prevented BMW from pursuing it. Instead, the E1 informed future research and contributed to their later electric prototypes, including the 2009 vision-efficient dynamics, and ultimately the i3 launched in 2013. Today, surviving E1 prototypes are part of BMW's heritage collection and occasionally displayed at automotive museums and events. Though it never reached production, it stands as an example of BMW's long-term interest in alternative propulsion. Number 1. The Ford Seattle-ite XXI. The Ford Seattle-ite XXI was one of the most ambitious concept cars ever produced by Ford, revealed at the 1962 Seattle World's Fair as part of the Century 21 exposition. It was designed to showcase Ford's vision of transportation in the 21st century. It embodied futuristic ideas that ranged from modular vehicle design to alternative powertrains. The Seattle-ite XXI was striking in appearance. It featured sharply pointed nose, canopy-like windshield, and 4 front wheels paired with 2 rear wheels. A layout that was chosen to enhance its stability and traction and braking performance. The body itself was modular, allowing for different front and rear sections to be hot-swapped out depending on the owner's needs, a concept reminiscent of modern vehicle platforms and interchangeable EV components. Ford envisioned this as a way for drivers to tailor their cars for commuting, travel, or cargo hauling. But perhaps most notable was the exploration of advanced propulsion. Ford designers suggested that future iterations of the car could be powered by nuclear energy, fuel cells, or other unconventional energy sources. The concept also incorporated early ideas of computer-assisted navigation and driver information systems, decades ahead of modern GPS and onboard computing. The interior of it was equally forward-looking, with a focus on ergonomics and advanced instrumentation. Their designers anticipated digital readouts, road condition sensors, and automated traffic guidance. The canopy-like cabin provided panoramic visibility, and the modular design even suggested the possibility of future autonomous operation. But the Seattle-ite XXI never progressed beyond the full-scale mock-up displayed at the World's Fair. No functional prototype was ever built, and many of its most radical features, particularly the nuclear propulsion, were speculative rather than a reality. However, the car's modular design and emphasis on safety anticipated trends that would emerge much later in the industry. Today, though, the Seattle-ite XXI is remembered as a symbol of mid-century futurism and optimism. While much of its technology remains science fiction, its ideas about modular platforms, advanced navigation, and non-traditional propulsion has influenced concept cars well into the 21st century. Surviving images and scale models of it remain in Ford's archives, and they continue to be exhibited at museums, which explore the cultural history of automotive innovation.